Today, I want to chat about why it's so worth it to care about money in your 20s, even if it doesn't feel like it. And I will admit that I'm super guilty of that personally. I've made a whole other video about that you can go back and watch, documenting my financial choices in my 20s, which were not ideal, let's say. And I wish someone had had some of these conversations with me when I was younger that I'm about to have with you now. So if you are in your 20s, and even if you're not, if you're in your early 30s or older, I hope this is helpful and gives you some motivation to get your finances together if this is something that you have struggled with. So I'm actually planning a whole separate video doing a deep dive into all the various reasons why people don't save money. So think things along the lines of the world is ending anyway. I'm never going to get to retire. I just want to live and enjoy my life now. So I'm going to unpack those more in a follow-up video soon, but we are going to chat about these ideas a little bit because I think some of these things are the very narratives that do keep us from saving in our 20s. I know that for me, things felt very far away. It didn't feel like it was immediately relevant to my life at all now. And looking back, I'm 37 now. I just wish I had paid a little bit more attention because my life would be so radically different right now if I had. Like, I can't even explain to you, if I had just paid even a little bit of attention to my finances, how different my entire life would be right now at 37. And personally, I think 37 is still pretty young. And it's just very humbling to see that even in my 30s, how much better my life could be if I had just planned a little bit more. So I know that when you are 24 years old, retirement might be the furthest thing from your mind, and just getting your personal finances in order doesn't seem that important, especially in an economy that quite frankly has failed Gen Z. I can understand the impulse to just throw your hands up and say none of this really matters. But wow, it really does. It really super does. And it's going to matter in your life in the next couple of years. It's going to matter to your life a decade from now, and it's going to matter to your life 30 years from now. So yes, retirement is important, but I cannot even express how much just doing a few things correctly with your finances in your 20s can essentially set you up for the rest of your life. Not necessarily that you'll be financially independent and never have to work again, but it will just set you up with so many options. You will be able to change careers much more easily. You will be able to pursue a passion career. You will be able to go back to school if that's what you want to do. You will be able to take a year off to travel, or a year sabbatical to write a book or work on other projects, like in your 30s and 40s. If you just get a few things right now. And that's the thing. I definitely did not realize that when I was younger. And I'm not saying it's too late for me. I have spent my 30s getting my finances in order, and I've made a lot of progress. I've made a lot of progress saving towards retirement. I've saved up an emergency fund. I am in a much better place than I was financially a few years ago. And that has already saved my ass a few times. Like, having my finances has improved my life right now so many times, more times than I can count. And it has also allowed me to do so many things that I'm so lucky to have done now. So if you are in your 20s and you are like, yeah, but like I can deal with that later, or I have time, time is on your side right now. I cannot express that enough. If you just commit yourself to learning about this now and really knocking it out of the park for the next 2, 3, 4 years, you can set yourself up so well for the rest of your life. It's crazy. Because I don't know if you've seen what will happen, and I'll put a graphic on the screen, what will happen if you invest for just 10 years from age 25 to 35 versus what happens when you invest from 35 to 65. So in that first example, you're only investing for 10 years from 25 to 35. You will end up with more money at the end than the person who invests from 35 to 65. You will have more money investing for 10 years than you would someone investing for 30 years, simply because you started earlier. That's how much of a difference compound interest makes. And I wish so badly that someone had shown me this picture and shown me these graphs, and I would have made some pretty different choices. And wow, my life would be so much better off right now. I might be a homeowner. I might be able to quit my job to pursue passion projects. I might be able to do all kinds of things that, quite frankly, I have more freedom now, but I'm still far away from being where I want to be because I started later. If you are 21, 22, 23, 25, 28, you have so much time right now. Start now if you haven't. So being responsible with your money in your 20s is not about delaying all gratification, never going out, never enjoying life, never traveling, never doing anything fun. No, I did all of those things in my 20s and it was amazing. I wouldn't take any of it back. So I absolutely believe you can still enjoy your 20s and have a great time while also taking care of yourself and essentially setting yourself up so that your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond are going to be amazing. That you will have so much financial security that you could retire at 50 if you wanted, that you can take these year sabbaticals, that you can quit toxic jobs, that you can go back to school. And for me, when I was in my early 20s, I was only ever thinking about it in terms of like what happens when I'm 65. And that's why saving money didn't feel important to me. Like it felt a million years away. And I just cannot express how much even just getting a head start on your retirement savings now is going to make your 30s and 40s and beyond feel so much more incredible. You will feel so much more at ease. You will feel so much more stable. You will be in such a better position to do other things like buy a house or buy a dream car or go on dream vacations if you just get this going now. And even though the economy is pretty terrible, especially for young people, there are things that you can do. And think of it as a temporary trade-off. Think of it as things that you are going to do for 2, 3, 4, 5 years to completely set yourself up for the rest of your life. So for example, living at home, if you can do that, do that. I did not have that ability to live at home for a prolonged period of time. I moved out when I was 17, and in my adult life, I've really only lived at home for like a 6-month period, other than like coming home to visit and things like that. But I've only, as an adult, actually lived with one of my parents for about 6 months. And that has been to the detriment of my financial life because it is really hard to achieve financial goals when you are spending $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month in rent, which is what I have been doing for a huge amount of my adult life. It's really hard to save an emergency fund when you are spending that much on rent. It's really hard to make progress towards your other financial goals when you are paying rent. It's really hard to save up and pay for a car free and clear with no car loan when you are paying rent. And so I wish I had had that as an option. I wish I had been able to do that, to live with family for 2, 3 years, just to get myself so much better set up for the future. Because the amount of progress you can make in those 2 or 3 years might be more progress than you can make in the next like 8 years living by yourself and paying an exorbitant rent. So I really think it's worth it to make that trade-off for a couple years. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to everyone. You have to take your family situation into account, your mental health. Is it really worth it? And in some cases, it's an easy win, in which case do it. In others, you have to weigh it a little bit more carefully. And for a lot of people and a lot of families, it doesn't make sense. Like it did not make sense for me, so I didn't do it. So I know that that's not an option for everyone. But even if you can't live with family, live with roommates in your 20s. Like you're in your 20s, this is the perfect time to do that. You don't need your own apartment yet. And I've lived in really expensive cities and paid pretty reasonable rent because I was splitting rent with a roommate. So even when I was in New York City, I lived in Williamsburg for $1,100 a month. $1,100 a month? Not bad rent. And I've looked it up more recently, and I've absolutely been able to find apartments in New York City, in Queens, in Brooklyn, where if you split with another person or you get 2 roommates, you'll each be paying $1,000, $1,200 a month, which is way more doable. And you don't have to do that forever. Again, you don't have to live with roommates forever. You can treat that as a temporary period in life where you are doing that so that you can actually save, because living on your own in your 20s is really hard. I would have absolutely been living paycheck to paycheck if I'd done that. Only way I could save for retirement, save up an emergency fund, is because I was splitting rent with other people. And I'm so glad that I did that, at least, because it still did set me up way better than I otherwise would have been if I had tried to live alone. I also understand that one of the hangups can be that this just feels really intimidating. That was definitely a barrier for me as well when I was trying to learn about this in my early 20s. Now we're going back into the 2000s, and the internet wasn't what it is today. So having all these social media accounts, people on Instagram, TikTok, talking about paying off their debt, paying off their credit cards, paying down their student loans, saving up an emergency fund. None of that was around when I was coming of age. And again, I wish it was. So know that even if you feel overwhelmed at the prospect of learning about personal finance, the information is there. Start just following a couple social media accounts, listen to a couple podcasts related to money. Just start small, take some little steps to start to learn the basics of budgeting, of investing. Start with really simple things like, does your workplace offer a retirement account? Get set up with that. Make sure that you're enrolled, that it's deducting from your paycheck. If you are eligible to get a match from your employer, like make sure you're getting that match at the very least, and figure out what it's being invested in. And you can even pick really simple things like a target date fund where you just say, hey, I want to retire in 2055, and they do the rest. They invest it for you based on how long your time horizon is. That's the most you need to know about investing to get started. You really don't need to know more than that just to get started. You can always learn more later, and you can always optimize, and you can always change your investments later. You can change out of a target date fund later. But if right now you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed at the prospect of learning about it, know that it doesn't have to be that complicated. You just need to get started, and getting started in your 20s will be the best thing that you ever do for yourself. I say that as someone in my late-ish 30s, that I wish so badly that I had just sat down and figured this out when I was 24. And now I'm sort of paying the price for that. If I had learned about budgeting and tracking my spending earlier, my life right now would be so different. I would probably be a homeowner right now. And I'm not, because I didn't make those decisions. I'd probably be much more free to travel and do other things right now. And I can't because I have to catch up on retirement savings. I'm driving a 10-year-old car because I have to. I don't have a choice. And so I'm doing all of these things now, and I'm making these sacrifices and these trade-offs now to set myself up for my 40s, 50s, and beyond. But wow, I wish I had done this earlier. It's so much more impactful in your 20s. Like that example I gave earlier of investing from age 25 to 35, how much more impactful that is than investing later in life. It's wild. So wow, I just wish I had figured this out a little bit sooner, and not exaggerating. My life would be completely different right now if I had. So give yourself options, give yourself choice. If you are someone who likes freedom and likes options and likes being able to quit toxic jobs and likes being able to go on amazing vacations and likes being able to move to your dream city or buying your dream car, get your money together. Get your money together now. Please, I beg of you, if you are in your 20s and watching this, you have so much time on your side. And also know that if you aren't in your 20s, it's not too late to start either. I had not invested a dime for retirement until I was about 30. And some people start later than I do. And that's okay. We're all on our own different paths. But just to say, the earlier that you can figure this out, the better. So even if you're still 10 or 15 years away from your retirement, you still have time. Like, you still have a lot of time to get this figured out and get this in hand. But you do actually have to sit down, read a personal finance book, listen to some podcasts, subscribe to some channels like mine, and just start to get acquainted with personal finance, even if it feels overwhelming. And it will literally change your entire life. The jobs that you take or quit, the vacations that you take, the family you have, the home you buy, the city you live in, it will affect everything you do. So it's super worth it. And if you are like 25, do it. Do it now. For me, please do it. You won't regret it.